Hey everyone, I'm Greg. I work at a company called Sendwithus.com. I'm the principal engineer there. Today I'm going to be talking a bit about one of my personal side projects. It's called Insomnia. It's basically a desktop app that lets you test out and consume REST APIs. So Sendwithus, to give you a brief description, is Sendwithus.com is basically an API and service to help you send transactional emails. So transactional email being like welcome emails, receipts, invitations, anything that's one-to-one and customized to that individual for that specific time that they're receiving it. So during day-to-day at Sendwithus, I work on the API quite a lot. So does most of our team. So I wanted a tool that allowed me to more easily interact with our API. I wanted to be able to store certain API requests so that I can repeat them from day to day. Before I built this tool, I was basically had a text file full of curl commands. If you don't know what curl is, it's basically the command line tool to make HTTP requests. We'll be going over a bit about what that is and why Insomnia makes that much easier in a bit. But so what do we need to do to get started? To get Insomnia, all you have to do is download the Chrome application. Yes, it is a Chrome application, so you will need Chrome pre-installed. But most people are using Chrome anyways, so it's not a big deal. So if you click download here, it takes you to the Chrome web store where you can just add to Chrome. So I'm just going to do that. Yes, Insomnia can write files, that's fine. I'm going to add it. And then it shows up in this little Chrome application launcher. So if I click on the Insomnia icon, it pops up. And you can see that it appears in my dock as well, which is really nice. So I'm just gonna put that over there so I can access it quickly. You can see it launched. It gives me up a little changelog here. I just pushed out a pretty big 2.0 update, so a lot of cool stuff in that I got out into this update, which I'll be going over. So without any further ado, let's get started. So here's Insomnia. I'm just going to move this over to another window so it's easier to see. It starts off pretty simple. You can create a new request. You can import. We're going to create a request, and the only requirement is that you need a group to put it under. So we're going to make a new group called Sendwithus, and we're going to use the send API first. So we'll make one called send email, and then hit create. So now we have an empty request. You can see you can choose the HTTP method, so get, put, post, delete, blah blah blah. You can put the URL in here. You can add a request body if you need to. You can add query parameters, basic auth, even custom headers if you want to. If your API requires custom things. So let's get started with sending an email. If I go back over to my web browser here, back to Sendwithus, click on Docs, then head over to the API docs. You can see that pretty easy here. I'm just gonna copy this base URL. So this is the URL that'll be at the beginning of every API request that we're gonna make. First one being that send request. So if I go back over to Insomnia, I can actually put this in here, and let's just try making a request right now to the API. Alright, it says forbidden. That's because we don't have an API key. So if I go back to the docs, it says to authenticate with the API, Sendwithus uses basic authentication. So with curl, which I mentioned before, you basically do basic auth with the username being the API key, and the password is just empty because we just ignore it. So you just put the API key as the username, and then you're good to go. So if I actually log into Sendwithus, I'm going to grab my API key here. So go over to API settings, copy the API key, go back over to Insomnia, and put it in as the basic authentication username. So this should allow me to get into Sendwithus. So let's go ahead and make that request again. And there we go. See, it succeeded. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger so it's easier to see. So this is the root of the API. It just returns a generic response saying what version it's on, where the docs are. So let's actually try and do something interesting. So I'll go back over to the docs here. I'm going to pick sending emails from the sidebar. And you can see here, to send an email, it's an HTTP post request to the /send endpoint. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to add /send to the end of my URL and change it to a post. So now I should be able to make a request. So as you can see, I changed it to the post. Now the request body shows up here. So to send an email, you need a few things. First thing is you need an email ID. So the email ID basically maps to a template in your system. So I'm going to log into Sendwithus again, go to templates, and created a little Insomnia demo email here. Pretty generic template. It says hello first name. These curly brackets is like Jinja templating, so you can send dynamic variables when you make the API request, and they'll get filled in according to the templating. I also put first name in the subject line, so that we'll be able to see how that works. So to send this email, I just have to copy the template ID, go back over to Insomnia, put in the template ID, and that's it. I need a couple more parameters, so let's go grab those. I need a recipient, which you can see is an object. It has an address and an optional name. So I'm going to go type that one out. Recipient address Greg plus demo at sendwithus.com. So I'm just going to send it to Greg plus demo. I don't think that's actually unique enough. So I'm going to put demo 2 just because, just so that's a first-time customer. I don't want a bunch of stuff showing up that I don't want you to see. So moving on to the next step, we're going to be specifying some email data. I mentioned you can pass dynamic variables to your template. So this is the email data. The docs describe it as object containing email template data. So I'll just copy this. Go over. No, I already put it there. Alright. So what we need is first name, because that's what we put in the template. So I'm going to specify first name Gregory, because that's my name. And this should be all of the data we need to send the email. So we're posting to /send with this data, and we're using our API key. So let's hit the send button here, and there we go. So you can see it sent the Insomnia demo template, which is exactly the one we wanted to send. So great. All right. If we scroll up, go back to the dashboard here, you can see the email that I just sent myself. It says it was delivered. I can actually view the email and see that the word Gregory filled in for that template variable. So we're good to go. We've sent an email with Sendwithus with dynamic data, and we saw that it showed up. So what's the next step here? So the next step is, let's actually show you a few more features of Insomnia that help your workflow. So let's say we wanted to add another request. So we could duplicate this request. Let's say we wanted to get the customer for the email we just sent. So I'm going to name this customer details. duplicate. I'm going to change it to a GET request because that's what it is. And I'll just open up the docs and show you what we're doing here. So Sendwithus has something called a customer. The customer gets created whenever you send somebody an email. So if I go /customers and it's a GET request with the email on the end, I can do /customers. I'm going to stop here really quickly. You can see I have the same URL in both requests. I don't want to be typing this URL out every time. And if the URL ever changed, I wouldn't want to go through every request and try and update it. So what I'm going to do is cut this. And just like we were able to render template data inside of Sendwithus email, Insomnia also lets you render data inside of the requests. So if I make a variable called base URL, and I put it in both places here, base URL, then I can actually go up to the Sendwithus request group that we made, hit this little drop down, edit the environment, and just as I passed a JSON blob to the API, I can define a JSON blob in here and create my base URL, paste it in there, and I'm going to add a couple more things to this. So I'm going to add our API key in here as well as our email that we used. So Greg plus demo2@sendwithus.com. So I'm going to hit save here. Grab my API key, also that I used. Fill in API key here. Again here. Go back to my environment. Put the key in. Save. So now I should be able to send the email again. Oh yeah, I was going to do replace this with email as well. So now I have dynamic template data inside of my request, and it's being reused in multiple places. So that's pretty cool. It saves us some time, makes it easier to manage all your things in one place. So this is really useful if I had Sendwithus lets you create test keys which don't actually send email, so they're useful for debugging and testing and doing all that sort of stuff. So if you change your API key to like a test key, so blah 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 blah, then you wouldn't have to go through all your requests and update it. You could just change it in one place and then you would use it everywhere. So that's sort of where the templating shines. So let's just make sure that this works with the templating in here. So I'm going to send the email again, and yep, it sure does. So that's cool. So I've sent Greg@sendwithus.com 2 emails so far. So let's try and get the customer. So I made a new API request here called customer details, and I'm going to try and grab that customer. So one thing I can do is do Greg plus demo2@sendwithus.com. So I can type out the email address manually. I just want to demo a feature here. So these are sort of special characters inside of a URL, like a plus represents a space. This is sort of a special character. So you don't want to put those directly in the URL, but if you select these, you can actually right-click and URL encode it right in the app. So super useful. I just wanted to point that out. We're actually going to be reusing our environment variable, so we called it email. And this is actually going to have the same problem because this also has special characters. So another thing you can do is actually just execute JavaScript in here. So encode URI component, I think that's right. So this will encode all our special characters when this string gets rendered, so that you don't have to worry about it. So if I hit submit here, I should get the details for the customer, and yeah, there we go. So I can see the email addresses here. First name is Gregory, locale not set, there's no groups. So I can actually go, if I go back to the Sendwithus app, I can also go to the logs, see the 2 emails that were sent and that they were delivered. And I'm just going to open the email on my phone so that you can see what it looks like after I open one as well. So while that open event comes in, I'm going to hop over to the customers page. So we just made an API call to get the customer details, which is basically the same data that's shown on this page here. So this is all the details of a customer. Customers in no groups. They have received 2 emails. They have data, which is first name Gregory. So all the data that is sent with the emails is also stored on the customer, which is pretty neat. It lets you go in and see what the state of each customer is. So one thing I didn't get from the API request was this list of emails, so let's try and get that. So if I go back to the docs here, I'm in the customers, I can go to get logs for customer. So it's a get request for this URL /logs. So all I need to do is add /logs, and I'm actually going to duplicate this first. So customer logs. So if I add /logs to the end of this and submit that, I get all the emails that the customer has received, as well as their status. And you can see here that both of them are opened, which is really neat. So I'm actually going to send one more quickly. See how quickly these show up here. Oh, okay. So the third one should be at the bottom of this. Oh no, it's the first one. So yeah, the one I just sent was sent. These 2 were opened, and you can see all the details for each one. So that's basically a quick demo. What else can I show here? You can see the response headers. You can see sent back content type, connection, all these headers. Very useful for debugging when you're developing an API. You can see it's a bit cramped in here, so you can also resize these panes, which is really neat. If you want to reset it, just double click on the bar there. Another cool thing, I showed you can duplicate requests. You can also rename and delete, but you can even export your requests as curl. So I mentioned curl is a command line tool for sending HTTP requests. Say I want to send my friend this request to make. If he doesn't want to download Insomnia, I can just export it as curl, copy this, send that to him, and he can run it right from his command line. So pretty useful. Another cool thing is if I copy this and create a new empty request, if I paste that into the URL bar, the curl command, oops, okay, that's not actually working. Let me delete that. Yeah, so moving on, if I go up here, another cool feature, besides exporting as curl, you can actually just export in an Insomnia format. So I can go export group. I'm going to save it to my desktop here. And if I pop that open, you can see that all the data is here. So I have a request group called Sendwithus. I have my environment, which contains our API key and whatnot. I have all my requests, so sending an email, getting customer details, getting customer logs. So if I wanted to send this file to my friend, then they would be able to import it into Insomnia and have this exact user interface to play around with. So this is really useful for us at Sendwithus. We use the export feature quite a bit to interact with our customers. So if a customer is having troubles, we can generate a sample request, send it to them, and they can execute it on their end. So it makes that really useful. I can also send, if I'm working on a new API endpoint, I can send the request to somebody else so they can test out the new API. So pretty cool, really useful for us. A couple other little features. I mentioned you can set query params and stuff. Query params are basically the parameters on the end of a URL. So if I wanted to set the foobar command, you can see it generates the query param string and puts it on the URL when you make the send request. What's also a bit interesting is if you put like special characters in here, it'll encode them appropriately. So super useful. You can add as many as you want, and it just keeps growing. Similar, you can also do it with headers. I want to add a custom header, and then that'll get sent along with the request as well. One last thing to mention, you can see the editor sort of knows that we're writing JSON here, and that's because we specified JSON, which is the default in this format selector. So you can also select like XML, plain text, form data, other things. But the cool thing about JSON is if you make a syntax error, it'll actually tell you that and then show you what's wrong, so that you will never actually type invalid JSON again, because it's not possible. So that's really useful. The other thing it does is, depending on which one of these you select, it'll add the content type header to the request when it's made. So what this looks like is, if it's JSON, it'll send the request with content type equals application JSON as a header. So it does that all automatically. I mentioned you can export as curl. What's interesting is, since curl it doesn't have any templating baked in, it actually fills in all of these variables for you when you export it. So I'll just show you that again. So recipient, it doesn't have the template syntax in here, it has the actual rendered template. So that's super useful. You can see it adds the basic auth, that content type I just mentioned. So really useful. Oh, that popped up twice. What else could we got here? Not too much else. The last thing I want to mention is that the app is responsive, so a lot of people like to work in split screen mode. So Insomnia just adapts to that use case. You can do things like toggle the sidebar if you want more space. If you go all the way down, the sidebar actually goes away, so you can still work at a really small size. And everything's still usable, so that's pretty awesome. And the last thing I just want to mention, oh, maybe not the last thing. There's actually a cool feature here that I use a lot. So you can create a workspace. Let's say I'm working on a new project called like cheese. Say it's like an API to get kinds of cheese and information on the kinds of cheese. So I can actually create a new workspace, and it's basically like a separate instance of the app. So you can like create a new request, cheese info. Create a new request, do all your work in here, and then when you go back to work at Sendwithus, you can switch back to the Sendwithus workspace and do your work. So it really keeps the UI clean, keeps all the stuff you're not worried about or concerned about out of your way. It sort of lets you separate your environments, so that's really useful. The last one I want to mention is the settings. So you can see all your import and export stuff is here. You get your keyboard shortcuts. You have your about. So if you have any feedback, I love chatting with people about Insomnia. So send me all your feedback, good or bad. Follow Insomnia on Twitter. I will reply if you tweet at me. Oh, and one more pretty cool feature. There's this open new window thing at the bottom, which I actually don't use very much, but it's pretty cool. Basically, from a technical perspective, I can like, say I duplicate this request here. new, I'll call it new, that actually shows up right away over here. So you can actually work on two separate things at once and sort of easily switch between them. So if I go change this URL to foo and go over to new, you can see updated to foo. If I keep typing, it doesn't interrupt the flow, but the data is still synced. So if I go back to new, you can see it updated. What's also cool is that I can rearrange these, and then it propagates over all the windows. So I haven't really found a use case for this, but maybe one of you will. So I just wanted to show it. Pretty cool technical demo, but not super useful. Yeah, and that's about it. So today we covered, I'm going to just delete this one. So we covered sending an email using Sendwithus. We covered how Sendwithus has Jinja templating that you can pass data to and render a template, send it along. We covered templating in Insomnia. So Insomnia also has templating to make your workflow easier. We covered a few API endpoints. Basically covered all of the Insomnia features that I use day to day and that our team uses day to day. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. As I mentioned before, just email me directly or message me on Twitter or something. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed the demo. I hope you can see the uses for something like Insomnia. And I hope it saves you time like it saves me time. So that's why I built it. Yeah, I hope it works. So hope you enjoyed this. Again, I'm Greg at Sendwithus.com, and have a good one.